Good morning. Welcome to the Inside Edge. I'm Zach Blackburn. Today is Monday, September 8th, and I'm coming to you live from a newly renovated Inside Edge studio. Let's talk about sales tax today. Labor Day came and went, and with it came a new onslaught of advertisements in the governor's race, especially as mail-in voting is set to start later this month. One such ad was an attack ad against Jack Ciattarelli from a group backed by the Democratic Governors Association. The ad included a couple of attacks, including a line in which a narrator said that Ciattarelli is, quote, talking about a 10% sales tax. The exact wording of that narration is important because Jack Ciattarelli has technically talked about a 10% sales tax. At a June rally in Bergen County, an attendee asked Ciattarelli whether he would consider abolishing the state's income tax and recouping some of those funds through an increase in the state's sales tax. Taking a cue from the attendee, Ciattarelli mentioned a recent fundraising trip he'd taken to Tennessee, and he mentions that Tennessee doesn't have an income tax, but does in some places have up to 10% sales tax, including on items like food and clothing, items that are generally exempt from sales tax in New Jersey. He's went on to talk about how every option is on the table in terms of lowering the tax burden on New Jerseyans. And while he hasn't released a super detailed tax plan, he also definitely hasn't proposed an increase in the sales tax or an abolition of the income tax. Still, that little 5-second snippet made its way into the DGA ad, and it's sparked controversy since. Of course, no political messaging exists in a vacuum. The attack ad also tried to tie him to Donald Trump and to Medicaid cuts, and it clearly was intended to imply that Ciattarelli has made this increase in sales tax a central plank to his campaign, and has looked to define him with the clip. If the DGA thought voters would interpret that line as Jack just mentioning a sales tax increase, then it wouldn't have a value to it very much, and it would have made the ad. But still, the narrator technically stuck to the truth and used the verb talk about, which Jack did. And while the DGA stuck to very careful phrasing, the Mikey Sherrill campaign took it a little bit further, actually, including one tweet from Mikey Sherrill's X account, which said that Jack Ciattarelli is, quote, pushing a 10% sales tax on food and clothing. Pushing can be a pretty versatile and vague word, but Jack Ciattarelli hasn't made the sales tax increase part of his policy platform or his stump speech. And so omitting context isn't a new phenomenon in politics. I know that if everyone took a look at anti-Sherrill attack ads, we could absolutely probably find similar instances or similar practices in how they frame certain votes or how those attack ads go. And it's definitely not a new concept. Still, there have been concerns that a precedent like this could lead to an even more slippery slope. Candidates will have to be more careful of what they talk about on the trail, even if they're simply saying that policymakers should look at how other states handle certain issues. Maybe most importantly, for the purposes of New Jersey politics, the Ciattarelli campaign's response to this kerfuffle shows that it could be painful for them. Ciattarelli's lawyer sent a cease and desist letter demanding that Democrats stop, quote, mischaracterizing his words. And his campaign launched a webpage called lyingamikey.com, saying that the entire basis of that section of the ad is untruthful. Ciattarelli has called Democrats desperate. Democrats have called Ciattarelli desperate. Everyone seems to be a little bit desperate. There is an election to win after all. And David published a more detailed story on that dispute on Saturday evening, if you want to read more. But ultimately, most New Jerseyans aren't going to read about the nuances of whether an audio clip in an attack ad tells the full story of a Bergen County rally from earlier this summer. And that means that an attack ad like this could still very well have an effect on how November goes. George Costanza, the patron saint of pessimism and falsehood, said, "It's not a lie if you believe it." It's up to New Jerseyans to decide whether they believe it. And I hope you have a good Monday. This has been the